What's up? Today I'm excited to share with you my top 5 chess openings for amateur players, especially if you love playing Blitz. And let's kick it off with the opening number 5, which is one of my favorite actually. It arises from the King's Pawns move, and after that you're going to go Bishop c4, starting the so-called Bishop's opening. Now, here's what I love about this. A couple things. First of all, you are highly likely to get your opponents off their opening knowledge right out of the gate, right? As early as move 2 of the game, they're already on their own. Secondly, what I love about this is that it's quite an aggressive opening, but it's also flexible, because here, let's say the most common move is knight f6, and here right now you already have a choice of whether you want to play more positionally or more aggressively. If you want to, spice it up, you can go d4 and counterattack, and now you put a lot of pressure on black. In contrast to this, if you want to play, more solidly, you can just go d3 and play standard moves. After black goes bishop c5, let's say knight c3, d6, which is we're still going over the main line. Once again, if you want to play standard chess, you can just play knight f3 and you get a very usual position. And if you want to be more aggressive, you can play pawn f4. So that's what's really cool about this bishop's opening. It gives you a lot of options to choose from. And after f4, there is a really cool trap here. A lot of your opponents will notice that the move f4 weakens this diagonal, and they can try to take advantage of that by going knight to g4 and hit this square. But after that, instead of trying to defend, you just play pawn f5, and you counter trick black, because now this knight is hanging, but black thinks, oh, that's not a problem, I was going to go there anyway. Knight f2, looks like black is just winning. But then you counterattack with queen h5, threatening something like the scholar's checkmate. Black realizes that and castles. After that, bishop g5, you keep throwing attacking moves. Now you're hitting the queen. Notice that this bishop is doing a good job pinning the pawn, therefore the pawn can never move forward because it's pinned. Therefore the queen has to go, goes queen e8, now knight to d5, you keep throwing pieces into your attack, and now actually you're winning. The knight threatens knight c7, but besides that it has one more target, and after, let's say, like plays knight takes h1, besides knight takes c7, there is an even stronger option, knight f6. Destroying black's castling, this is check, and after this exchange there is no defense against, queen g5 and checkmate. That's really cool, so that's how you can beat even an experienced opponent using the bishop's opening. By the way, if you want to know more about the bishop's opening, I've got a dedicated video about that, and you may check this out later. Number 4 in our list is an opening for black against white playing pawn e4. In this case, I recommend that you go for the Scandinavian defense. The great advantage of this opening is that you define your opening right away, right on the first move, and therefore you don't let white to choose what opening variation they want to play against you. And now there is just single opening, the Scandinavian defense that you gotta learn, and that's it. And the simplicity and also the aggressive nature of it is something that I really love about this. So after pawn takes, instead of recapturing with a queen, which gives white an extra tempo for knight c3, you can go ahead and play knight f6. In this case, you want to take this pawn back without any drawbacks, without exposing your queen too early. Now, if white plays any neutral move, you can just take this pawn and get an equal game. After that, everything's fine. If white wants to hold on to this pawn, the only way to do that is to play pawn c4. By the way, notice that knight c3 does not defend it. You can still capture it, right? Because your knight is defended. So that doesn't do anything. So let's put it back. The only way to really defend this pawn is to play pawn c4. And after that, I suggest an Icelandic gambit, pawn a6. You're sacrificing one little pawn for the sake of quick development, opening up lines, and giving you a lot of prospects for your attack. Now, normally you're going to simply play knight c6, bring your bishop out, and after your quick development, you're going to start attacking. If white wants to counteract, they gotta take the center, pawn d4. But now, there are a lot of challenges for white. Bishop b4 check. We take advantage of this opportunity right away. After knight c3, you go knight a4, and you keep using this pin, you keep putting pressure. And guess what? In many cases, your opponents will go wrong right here, including strong opponents, and especially if you're playing blitz, because you're already putting quite significant pressure on white. It's already not easy to find the right move. And if I'm not mistaken, the most played move here by white is actually bishop d2, which is a standard reaction for white, in different situations when you've got this pin and you attack. But in this particular position, it's just wrong, because that breaks the connection between white's queen and this pawn, and therefore you can just now simply grab it. Now your pressure is really significant. Your attack all around, you're still putting pressure, to this pawn. And funnily enough, a lot of your opponents, including like 2800 rating opponents, played things like knight to f3, trying to take advantage of this attack, but it fails to quick takes f2, checkmate. Here's the number 3 in our list. If you're a more positional player and you prefer to play safe, then this opening is right for you. It is the London system. You probably are aware of it. You're starting off with the move pawn d4, and after black plays any moves, doesn't really matter. You're gonna play your stuff. Your bishop is gonna go to f4. That's the key move here. And after that, you're gonna build this pyramid of pawns in the center. Again, regardless of black moves. You're going to have this pyramid of pawns, which really secures your position against any early attacks of your opponent. And your development here is really simple. After black plays any moves, your knight is going to go here. If black ever goes bishop d6 to challenge your bishop, there are many things you can do. The simplest is to just drop it back to safety. If black ever trades here, you open up the h-file for your rook. It's cool. Who knows? Maybe you'll even checkmate black if they castle short. If not, no problems. You just continue your stuff. After black castles, you play your bishop to d3. After that, you castle kingside, and that is the right setup for white here in the London system. Again, the simplicity is the great advantage. The one thing that I don't like about it is that it's somewhat overused, as the London system has been popular, quite extremely popular over the last decade or so, and therefore, like, your opponents probably are familiar with it. That's a little bit of a disadvantage, but nevertheless, it's definitely playable. Here, of course, it's a more solid opening, but nevertheless, it has some opportunities to go aggressive. For example, you can at some point throw your knight here to e5, let's say bishop b7, your knight can go there to e5, and now you already start, challenging black. Maybe you will even fix it there by playing pawn f4, and then black may actually struggle to deal with this knight, so you do have certain aggressive options here anyway. Number 2 in our list is our secret weapon for our subscribers only, so if you're not subscribed yet, then please close your eyes while watching this opening. So against d4, it's quite challenging for black to find an aggressive setup, because it's a more positional chess anyway, but we've got you covered here. You can, once again, gambit your pawn right out of the gate, right on the first move of the game. And after a pawn takes e5, instead of going for the England gambit, where black goes knight c6 and queen a7, which is a bit tricky and awkward opening, you play a more standard gambit. You just go pawn d6. You're not seeking any cheap trick. You're just aiming for quick development and attack. That's what you should be aiming at in pretty much any gambit. And that's exactly what you achieve here. Now, of course, strictly speaking, you do not play this against a title player in a serious tournament game, etc., etc. Full disclosure, don't try this at home. But if you're playing just, friendly games in the internet, then it's a perfectly fine opening. Here, after white goes knight f3, you just develop. It's very simple. And your plan here is to castle queenside. That's the key. After white goes knight c3, bishop comes here to g4. You do want to free up these squares because you plan to castle long. And after that, your rook will take part in your attack. But more about that in a moment. So bishop g4, we're putting pressure here. Your opponents are going to play pawn e3. Now queen e7, we're still preparing long castling. White goes bishop e2, trying to neutralize this pin, and now you castle queenside. And in this position, you're already quite ahead in development. You're having a really nice active position. And this extra pawn of white does not really matter too much, unless white manages to trade all the pieces and go into a pawn endgame, which is unlikely to happen, especially if your opponent is not, such a high-level guy. And a lot of your opponents will actually here simply castle. Again, if not, you still have a strong attack. But if they castle, that's pretty cool because they overlook this discovered check, winning the queen. And you can do it right away, or you can first trade the defender, and after that you can pull it off. Bishop takes h2, check to the king, and on the next move you're grabbing the queen happily, getting the decisive material advantage, and you win. So again, that's a really cool and completely unknown opening by pretty much everybody, and that's how you get an active game at the cost of just one little pawn. If you want to know more about this opening, yes, you guessed it right, I've got another video about this particular opening, and actually all the openings that I mentioned here, all the 5, I'll drop links to my other videos where I go more in depth for each of these 5 openings in the video description. So if you enjoyed one of them and want to study deeper, you may just click one of the links in the description and check this out. And the winner, the first place in our rating, is the opening which should be considered illegal because you just win with it in so many cases. Now, it arises from the first most usual moves, and you use it as black, after the Italian game. Well, supposedly the Italian game, because you don't go for it. Instead of playing any trivial move, bishop to c5 or knight to f6, you all of a sudden surprise your opponent with an aggressive move, pawn f5, kind of playing like the King's Gambit or the Vienna Gambit, rather, as black. And the great advantage of this, again, is that you catch your opponents off guard. And there are so many ways for your opponent to go wrong and to go down very quickly that it is completely insane. Like, one easy way for white to lose immediately is to defend this pawn by playing knight to c3, and after the exchange on e4, you just play d5, forking white's minor pieces, and you win. That's just one of them. But that's not the only one, because the most played move in this position for white is the move which is also wrong. It's pawn takes f5, because white thinks, hey, why not to win a free pawn? But after that, you play pawn e4, and all of a sudden white realizes that all these squares in front of white's knight are already controlled by black. And therefore, yes, some of your opponents might be familiar with it, but this is a very rare case. Most of your opponents will just be surprised, will feel uncomfortable, will not know what to do. And, you know, what should white do now? Moving this knight all the way back to g1 seems very passive. If your opponent tries playing queen to e2, pinning this pawn and trying to be tricky, you just play the symmetric move queen e7, you neutralize the pin, and now you renew the threat of, you know, capturing the knight. So ultimately white will have to go back. By the way, a little tip: as soon as white opens up this diagonal and white is ready to hit your king, usually in pretty much every position you just need to bring your knight here to f6 and take control of the square so that white's queen cannot go there. And that's how you stop any potential attack of white. If they ever open it up, you just go knight f6. Knight f6 is a useful move anyway, you were going to play it anyway, so that's a no-brainer. Now, what should white do next? Once again, they were still struggling with this knight. It's been moving back and forth, and still white can't castle, because of this annoying pawn that controls this square. And white may decide to try to trade it off. Also, since white is a pawn up, white doesn't mind to trade queens. White, in fact, would love to do that. But now, once again, you upset white with the move knight to d4, attacking this queen, and after it goes somewhere, and let's not forget that it must keep guarding the pawn on c2 as well. So let's say it goes here to queen d2, there is a final shocker, knight takes c2. You give up the knight in a very spectacular fashion, where it's a fork to the king and rook, and if the knight is captured, then pawn takes d3 finishes things off. This is a discovered check to the king, and it's an attack of the queen, which is something you're gonna win right on the next move, and it's time for white to resign. I'm curious to know if you've tried playing one of these 5 openings already and how it worked for you. So if you have this experience, please let me know in the comments below. I'm curious to know, and I guess other people will benefit from this as well.